And welcome into a special edition of, I guess, Community Comment is what we're going to call it. A Republican National Convention recap, RNC recap. I am Justin the Ninja Wylesky.
I'm Charlie Dern.
And we're coming to you live from the Daily Dodge Television studios, taking a moment to kind of reflect back on the prior week. Really big events happening in Milwaukee, right here in our backyard. And they gave us the opportunity, us being, of course, you and myself, to head over and join the team at 620 WTMJ and 1017 The Truth, and really be present at something that for a lot of people is a once-in-a-lifetime event to go to.
It was really cool, especially the access that I had. Once you were inside the second security zone, and we'll talk about the security zones again, but you go through the car, and then once you're through that one, you're able to walk around, and then once you're in the actual convention itself, I was shocked at the access that we all had. You're just walking around outside of the Pfizer Forum in that little area there, the plaza. You're next to bars, you're next to restaurants, and you're next to like politicians, delegates. It was really cool, and you'd just be able to walk up to them, or in my case, I had to walk up to them with a microphone and just ask them questions.
And I mean, the understanding that people have is that, it's just going to be a whole bunch of Republican people walking around, and you're not wrong. But amongst those people are people that you hear about on the nightly news, or in some cases, big name celebrities. We kept seeing things pop up like, Russell Brand's walking around, and I was like, Russell Brand, like he's not even an American. What is he doing here? But he's a supporter, so he made his presence known, and you never really knew who you're going to walk into. If you're a big fan of politics at all, it was a who's who of politics. We also had some local faces who made their way from here to the RNC. One of them being local Dodge County Sheriff Dale Schmidt was there.
Yeah, I remember hearing him on, I think it was either Monday or Tuesday while I was on my way out. He was just stopping by. He was just walking around the media area, and he saw somebody that he knew. I think the person's name was Eric or something of that sort. But I remember, he stopped in, and then 620 was like, oh, well, you're a sheriff, let's get you on. And then he joined them on the air. And then I think he did some other appearances as well. So that's really cool that, the local ties get there. And then I also was just driving. I was outside of the security zone, and then I passed Glenn
Grothman?
Yeah. He was just walking around the city of Milwaukee. It was just kind of cool to see these more local ties up here in Dodge County all the way downtown in Milwaukee.
Well, let's go ahead and start by diving in then and talking about the apparent impact that this was supposed to have on Milwaukee. And I know final numbers for how it all went down haven't come out yet. But I know day one, while I was waiting in my security line just to get through the vehicle checkpoint, which was quite a wait, I was seeing tours of people attending, Republican National Convention attendees. These could be delegates from other states. They could be handlers, supporters, just people who were there for the event, who were taking tours of Milwaukee. So they were going down by the Riverwalk. They were heading towards the museum and just walking all over the place and seeing what Milwaukee has to offer, which can't be bad for a city like Milwaukee.
Totally, and I'm not, like you said, I'm not sure how the numbers will shake out or even how they'll measure it. Maybe the party ends up writing a check with a number on it that just goes straight to the city. Not really sure how that goes, but I know it brought good eyes. Mayor Cavalier Johnson was talking about how, yes, even though I am a Democrat candidate or Democratic mayor, this is still something that we believe in for the city as an ultimate good, and I think it really was. I did see something about how the bronze fawns didn't get as much love as people were expecting. Not as many people were stopping by and seeing it, but maybe that's just a more Wisconsin thing or Midwest thing that you'd actually go and see. Because, I'm not sure about the spread of Happy Days and how it did nationally.
I mean, I thought it did fine nationally, but you got to show the fawns some love.
You got to see.
You have to. Huge shout out to Mayor Cavalier Johnson and his understanding that it's not necessarily about his views and what he likes to bring to the city, but it's just about doing what's right for the city. And this was definitely a big thing to bring in.
I definitely think these conventions should stay or should live in this, I don't know what you'd call Milwaukee, like a tier 2 city. Mm-hmm. The cities that aren't New York, LA, even really Chicago, in my opinion, based on just my experience there, being able to get around so easily. Everything was a 5-10 minute walk from each other. Once you're inside the security zone, especially, it's all right there. You don't even need to get into a car to go from one area to the other. But in Chicago, from what I understand, there's going to be multiple spots where you'll need to go, and you'll have to go through multiple security checkpoints then a couple times a day if you're moving around. So I really feel like the small cities, I know that it was in Cleveland at one point. I believe the DNC might have been in Charlotte at one point, if I'm not wrong.
I think so, yeah.
Those, like, I think it's called a tier 2 city, like a smaller, it's a city, but it's not one of the huge cities.
Right, it still could be one of the biggest, if not the biggest city in your state, but it's not the giant metro population area that you expect when you think of like New York, LA, stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Diving a little bit into security, we've shown this graphic before. This is the security zones, so to speak, that were available. The yellow zone is the vehicle accessible zone. So you could see vehicles coming in there, finding their way to parking spots, whatever the case may be. And there was only so many access points that you could use to get in and out of those zones. Everything else was barricaded off with those concrete barriers you see, really designed to keep people out of those zones, not let vehicles pass. And I know from day one that it didn't matter what your vehicle was, you were getting checked. There's actually an image up on our WBEV and Daily Dodge Facebook page, which shows a postal van that was making its way through the checkpoint. They still have to deliver mail. I mean, it happened during the week. They didn't take the time off because the RNC was in town. So driving through the checkpoint, it had to stop. Same procedure we had to go through. Open the hatch, roll down windows, pop the hood, turn the vehicle off. The dog, the mirrors underneath, checking everything out, the whole 9 yards. Same stuff that we had to go through. There's a government truck having to do the same thing.
I actually ended up seeing on Thursday, the last day, a USPS truck go through, but they got a little bit of a police escort through the line, and then were put in a separate line by themselves and given like their own detail by themselves so that everyone else could continue through while they did more of a in-depth check at that van and roll through all the mail there.
I will say the vehicle checkpoints seem to become smoother and more advanced as the days went on. Day one, it was just a cluster. I mean, there were so many vehicles, and then it was, hey, we only have 2 cars at a time going through, 1 lane wide checkpoint. And so if you've got 100 cars trying to get through, you're waiting, And in this case, hundreds of cars waiting to get in. And so it was a very long wait. People were trying to go from 2 lanes to 1, but then people were trying to treat 2-lane roadways like they were 4, blocking the hop, blocking intersections, police trying to get there and direct traffic. Day one was a nightmare.
Day one was a nightmare, and then my very last time through the security zone on Thursday was really bad. I got through just fine in the morning. It was really quick. I went on that Water Street one, or Michigan, the one that we both did.
Plankington and Michigan, yeah.
Yep. And then on Thursday, I had to, or I didn't have to, but I went to the Hispanic Coalition or Hispanic Leadership Coalition's little luncheon that they had with a couple speakers.
Which was outside the zone.
It was outside the zone,
right.
So I had to leave, and then I wanted to come back. And when I wanted to come back to that same entrance, that one was actually shut down at that point. So they weren't letting anyone through. So I had to go around, went over by the Milwaukee courthouse, and that one took a while. And when I was in line and I was finally talking to one of the security officers there, I asked him, I was like, so how come the other one got shut down, but this one's open? He was like, why is it shut down? I have no idea. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. And then it was the most thorough search they've ever done. They they recognized the guy that, the stickers they put on your car.
Yep, I saved mine as souvenirs. They're in my office.
Yep. So he was like, oh, okay, I see that you've done this, you've run this play. He had some kind of analogy that didn't work.
Right.
And he kept saying it. But they then went thoroughly through my car. Like there was one guy who opened up my backpack, which hadn't happened before. Opened up my glove compartment, hadn't happened before. The center console, opened that up. It was very thorough, and they had the dog come all the way into the car. For me, beforehand, they didn't really have that. So that one, like, nothing to worry about in my car. But when they started going to these extra steps, I was like, wait.
Right.
What
Well,
if
that's
there's
because they're doing those
something in
mental
here?
checks. Like, did I remember to take everything out? Like, because, road flares can't go in.
Yeah.
I was told fireworks were coming in, and people were like, you can't have the fireworks. So and people were like, oh, I forgot that was in there from the 4th. I don't even know why. It's like, well, whether you forgot it or not, well, now it's got to come out because that's not allowed.
Didn't you say the person with the road flares was ultimately able to grab them on his way out?
Yeah, they told them that if they came back through the same checkpoint, that they would give them back, which is kind of cool because if you forget to take your pocket knife out of your pocket at the airport, they're like, throw it away or mail it to yourself because you can't get it on the way back through.
I like to imagine that guy coming back through the line. Hey, are there a couple of road flares sitting around? Oh, yeah. Those are mine.
Recognize me? That's my face. Yeah, well, we'll dig more into that. We do have to take a quick break here. When we come back, we'll dig a little bit more into the security and maybe a theory on why it might have been a little bit more difficult on that Thursday. We'll be right back on Community Comment on 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge. And welcome back to a special edition of Community Comment. Again, I am Justin, the Ninja Wylesky.
I'm Charlie Dern.
And we are recapping our time in Milwaukee for the RNC. We talked a little bit about how security for the vehicle checkpoint got a little bit more difficult on Thursday. And it occurred to me that Thursday there was two major events that happened. One, there was a scheduled walkthrough of presidential nominee and former President Donald Trump walking through Fiserv Forum to understand the layout, where he was going to be, the checkpoints, making sure everything was secure, which is understandable considering the events of the weekend prior. So that's one. And then, of course, the follow-up to that being the 5 p.m. session that ultimately culminated in him giving his acceptance speech. So I can imagine they wanted to tighten things up a little bit more for that reason.
Especially after watching his speech on Thursday night there, you can really, or me having gone into the Pfizer Forum, you can really see where all the cameras are. And then having watched Donald Trump speak, he was looking all over the place at the different cameras. So that's definitely what it was him kind of getting a feel for all that. And I'm sure he had to hit his marks, especially when he came out with the Trump lights behind him.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably
the big
had
marquee.
to see all that. Yeah, right.
Trump on Broadway. So I mean, quite the spectacle for the entire event. And we can kind of dive in a little bit more about everything that was going on by talking about how it wasn't all at Pfizer. We got a graphic up right now on the screen if you're watching on Daily Dodge TV. There were multiple segments for where everything was happening for the Republican National Convention. It was all contained within one security zone. So you had your outer zone that was vehicle access only. Then you had a smaller zone that was pedestrian traffic only. And there you were subject to more like a TSA checkpoint. So you walk through, x-ray, scan your bag, check everything you got, make sure you don't have anything you're not supposed to. And then you were allowed further access. Then to get inside some of the buildings like the Baird Center or Panthers Arena or into Pfizer, did require specific passes.
Yep. So to get into the convention at all, you needed a pass, and I'm not sure exactly how it worked for just like civilian entry, but it had to be screened and cleared by the Secret Service weeks beforehand. So people weren't actually able to just like buy a ticket or anything of that sort, which we weren't sure about last week, but that ended up being the case. You needed to get cleared weeks prior in advance. Luckily, I was media, so I was kind of able to skip a lot of lines on getting through and just kind of quickly throw my backpack through. But then, you needed a special media credential of some sort to get into UW Panther, which is where the Wisconsin media row was. That was in the upstairs of Panther Arena, and then the general media, the national media, was on the ground floor there at the arena. And it was so cool being there and seeing everyone and getting to barge into conversations or just kind of walk up to people with a microphone in my hand and just collect audio, take pictures, just see all the faces. And a lot of these people, for me, not having followed too closely the whole political realm, they're all just kind of characters that I'll see on my TV or on my Twitter feed or, all these social media feeds. And then seeing them in person, it kind of brings it all home. It really makes you realize, these are just real people.
Yeah, when you see Matt Gaetz in person, you're like, wow, those eyebrows really do go way up there.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. No, but I mean, when we talk about the setup that they had there, it was really kind of brilliant because each media company, each segment of media was given kind of a booth. And in our case there, WTMJ had a setup, and 101.7 The Truth had a setup as well. And so they broadcasted all day live shows from there. Their seats were always occupied. And then we had people whose job it was to go out and find the people who would then handle the different politicians and drag them over, get them into our seats, and get them to give interviews. So a lot of times we had no idea who was talking to who until we could grab somebody. And sometimes it was a matter of, oh, hey, we want to talk to, Ron Johnson. We need to get Ron Johnson over here. Well, Ron's not available till 2:30. Okay. Can we get a hard commitment on that? Sure. As long as he doesn't go long with CNN or go along with, with C-SPAN or whoever. So it did make it for kind of a wild ride for people who were sitting right there in that segment. But it was nice that they set up a separate state media section, which allowed, I don't want to say smaller, but maybe not national known media groups to really get in there and report on what's going on.
And then it also allowed for all the Wisconsin politicians or Wisconsin faces like Dale Schmidt being able to just go up there and quickly hit everything that he needs to hit. I know that when I was up there, I saw Glenn Grothman again up there. I'm sure Eric Hovde and people of those sorts were definitely up there and doing that. And I believe that was the first time ever that a convention had a specific section designated for the state's media to be for whatever reason, because it was so easy to just quickly go up a flight of stairs, and then there's only Wisconsin media outlets. I'm
Right.
just really surprised that hadn't been done before. Maybe it just hadn't been thought of before, but that felt like a no-brainer.
Well, with the proliferation of information nowadays, especially with social media, a lot of information can get out there very fast. A lot of bad information can get out there really fast. And the last thing you want is information only in the hands of the big networks, and the little networks are trying to piece it together and guess what's happening. So I can understand, why they brought it up now. Hopefully it's something that continues in the future, because it did a great job. I want to touch on some of the areas that were there. So obviously we talked about Panther Arena, which was where the local media was, and really the dedicated you can set up and report here spots. Then, of course, there was Fiserv Forum, which is where all the big sessions were happening, and that's where you have those seats that are set aside for delegates. We actually have video that I'm rolling right now that shows big stage, big signs, big lights. Does not look like the Bucks are playing there, for sure. But there are different segments that are set up for different delegates from different states. And then, of course, media, we were relegated to upper segments, which not that there's ever a bad seat at Fiserv, but we mentioned this before. The spot for us, little, Good Karma Brands, was kind of off to the side in the back. So not exactly where you want to broadcast from, but it does give us the ability to see what's going on, hear the news as it's happening, and get that back. But there was only 2 seats there. That's all they could afford us was 2 seats.
Those were the only 2 seats, and then we had 2 floor passes then. So we had John McCure from 620 WTMJ. He was on the floor for that final day, and it was actually one of our teammates, Sandy Max's birthday. And before the whole session, that main session at 5 o'clock, we were joking around that since it's her birthday and there's all these balloons that are around, there's some gold balloons too.
Oh,
and
nice.
So Sandy and John were joking that John should grab a gold balloon for Sandy, and he ended up grabbing a gold balloon as it came down at the end of it, popped it, put it in his backpack, and then brought it back to Sandy for her birthday. So that was a funny moment that
is awesome. I think there's even a clip out there as well where everybody's chanting and cheering, and him being the news guy was just stoic and watching everything go down and was not taking part of it, but being there, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it was funny, kind of a full circle moment for me with all the cheesehead love that was shown during the thing. Trump even mentioned that the Packers are going to be good this year, which was funny. But yeah, I was standing right where the Wisconsin delegates were sitting and where they had all the cheeseheads, and it's right there and right there in the front of the front of the stage. So that was. Yeah, just a full circle moment for me.
Yeah, front and center for Wisconsin, which is nice. And it really did put us on a big stage, which is absolutely what you want to see. Now, just because there was a lot of people walking around doing interviews at Panther Arena, and just because there was stuff going on at Fiserv for the special sessions they did, which essentially was noon and 5 on that Monday, and then essentially 5 o'clock sessions Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that doesn't mean there wasn't other stuff to do. There was constantly things going on. Yes, there were some protests. Those were outside the zone. Those were peaceful, which is great. I think there was very minimal disruption there at all. They were, I believe at one point on that Monday, they said there was 2 groups that were protesting each other, essentially. They met in the middle. Words were exchanged, but that's all that was exchanged, which is awesome.
I'm just surprised that was even the idea in my head of 2 parties converging that are definitely against each other, and then for that to then result in like a peaceful, nothing happened, no one was hit, nothing. Awesome. All the power to them and the police and everyone that was there to disrupt it or back everyone away. But whenever you start a story with 2 parties converging,
right,
it normally doesn't end well. So
I had somebody tell me, talking with a really good friend of mine who happens to live on the West Coast, he said the only reason that happened like that in Milwaukee is because Midwest Nice won that day.
Yeah, definitely.
So I can't argue with him there. We do have to take one more break before we get into our big segment, so we're going to go ahead and take a break for ABC News here on a special edition of Community Comment on 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge. And welcome back to a special edition of Community Comment, a Republican National Committee wrap. Again, I'm Justin the Ninja Wylesky here with
Charlie Dern.
And we've talked about a bunch of different stuff that's going on that went on with the Republican National Convention, which has now ended. Took up 4 days of time in Milwaukee, disrupting the normal flow of things there. But it doesn't sound like it was in a way that it was at all destructive to the city. I know a lot of businesses within. I think they did an interview on The Truth or WTMJ with the owner of the Drink Wisconsinly bar that's right across from Fiserv. They said packed every night, just absolutely packed, which is good. That's exactly what you want as a business owner. Obviously, businesses outside the zone maybe didn't get as much love during the day when stuff was happening, but considering the amount of effort it takes to get in and out of those zones, it doesn't overly surprise me.
Especially if you can work from home. Might as well just not deal with any of it and just work from home. So I totally understand that. But yeah, it did catch some of my friends by surprise on Thursday. Since I grew up in Milwaukee, I wanted to meet up with them, get a drink after work. And ultimately, they worked right on Wisconsin Avenue, so pretty close to where we were parked at at Good Karma Brands. And so I just walked over to them, and I was like, okay, well, we can go anywhere around here. And they're like, what are you talking about? Everything's so busy down here. There's going to be no room anywhere. And I was like, well, that's not how it's going at all. Actually, everything's open, and everything's really easy to get serviced because of the fact that no one's coming downtown. No one's dealing with this. So let's deal with it, and it'll be really easy. And that's what we ended up doing. We went to Moe's Irish Pub, downtown Milwaukee.
Oh, there you go. Now, before you went to Moe's Irish Pub, you took a lot of time to tour a lot of what was going on, and you got to walk through an area that I thought was really cool. It was Convention Fest, which I think is just a great name. When I think of fest, obviously, and I've said this before, a music festival or music fest is about music. If you go to a car fest, it's about cars. So if you go to Convention Fest, it's obviously about conventions. And there's a lot of history stuff there, including history specifically about the Republican Party in the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was happening right on that street. I forget the name. That's overlooking right underneath, straight ahead, is the courthouse. And that reminded me a lot of Summerfest or any kind of festival, really. I'm sure the Dodge County Fair will remind me of the same. If you're watching on Daily Dodge TV, you'll see the Convention Fest white block there. That was all food vendors, drink vendors. There was clothes that you could buy. There was a bobblehead area that I almost stopped in and got one. The guy had bobbleheads of like every political figure you can think of that comes to mind immediately. So I almost stopped in there and checked that out. There was this one thing that 3D printed you and your buddies if you wanted them to. So there was a group of policemen that were outside getting ready to do that. Scanned you got a scan of yourself, and then they make little probably 3D printed figurines of yourself. There was a police crew doing that. Cool. It was. I wanted to stop in because that looked really cool. And then actually inside the Convention Fest, which was in the Baird Center, that's where I saw a tour of a scaled Oval Office, which, if you're on the Daily Dodge TV stream, you can see it. And that was really cool. It reminded me a lot of my trip to Washington, D.C. in 8th grade, where we got to kind of see things like that. We didn't go in the Oval Office, but we got a chance to see a lot of different different stuff of that nature. There was also the Wisconsin Historical Society was there with a lot of stuff about like the women's movement in Wisconsin back in like the 20s and 30s. There was also stuff. There was a exhibit on all the American presidents that had a little thing on each of them, and then of course the Biden and Obama ones were off to the side, and then it was clearly staged for the RNC. It was,
right.
Long story short, it was very clearly these presidents are here, other ones are here, like that. And then there was in that exhibit there was a presidential shoes area.
I saw that. It was like one shoe from different presidents.
Yeah.
Like, we only took one shoe.
Yeah.
We could keep the other.
Like, I saw that. I was like, that's kind of cool, but there wasn't, I don't know. I guess I'm not really a shoe person maybe, but they're all just leather, like Oxford shoes at the end of the day. I'm sure they're really nice.
So you can like compare size and be like, I've got presidential feet.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And yeah, there wasn't like a ton about like the leathers or anything like that like would really jump out to you, or numbers on how much money they cost. None of that was really there, but I guess it was cool to be like, oh, Nixon wore that shoe. Okay, Reagan wore that one. Oh, that looks exactly the same.
Right.
And yeah, and then like of course the Trump shoe had its own, personal Donald Trump thing on it with it.
Oh, I didn't know if you meant like the Trump sneaker was there.
Oh well, there was a one of those tents was selling the Trump sneaker, not real, but some counterfeit Trump gold sneaker. But then his actual like Oxford shoe was there in its own case. And it had his name on it with a signature and all that. But yeah, there was a lot to do. Then there was a bunch of different booths for different organizations, like nonprofits that were, I guess, for the party. Like there was one. It was like conservatives for the planet kind of thing. Like we're conservative, but we're also like pro environment or environmentalists. Right. There was stuff of that nature. And then, of course, there was a UPS center where you can buy something and then send it home if you're not from the area and you wouldn't be able to travel with it. That was all in the Baird Center there. And I didn't know. It didn't loop around completely. I thought it was a circle, and I went too far. I asked somebody, does this loop around? She said, no, you need to be in this area. And I was like, okay. Kept walking. She's like, no. Like, I mean, you can't be over there. And I was like, oh, geez. All right, fine. Like,
no guns drawn though?
Can we rope it off? I was just walking. I don't know. Anybody could have done what I did. I got in trouble.
Yeah, don't get in trouble. Now, while you were wandering over there, you did find a really interesting piece of literature.
Oh, yes.
That you decided to share with everybody. And we didn't share this video clip as part of any of our stuff that we put up on the WBEV or Daily Dodge Facebook page, but we're going to share it now for all the people who are watching Daily Dodge television. Give us a little lead up. What are we about to see? Yeah,
so outside the president's area, there was two guys that were selling a book that was like a really nice, like leather-bound book with one of those page markers in it, and they were selling the it was either called the collection of poems of Donald Trump. This was the volume 2. They said volume 3 is coming out in the fall.
Which means there is volume 1.
Yeah, right. And they weren't selling volume 1 there. I was like, what if I want to buy the whole collection?
Right.
They took Donald Trump's tweets over time, and they kind of formatted it like you'd imagine a poem book is formatted, where the text is all over the place in different shapes, and it was just really creative. And I didn't get a chance to go back and buy one, but I really wanted to. I know that you can find it on Amazon. They gave me their website, but I definitely forgot it already.
I really hope there's some place in that book where there's a spot that teaches you how to impersonate Donald Trump before you read it, so you can really get his inflection in there when you're throwing it out. But
right.
That'd be nice.
You definitely have to read that in his voice and his inflection, yeah, because that only makes it better.
Definitely. I want to talk a little bit more about the overall feeling of the event, the mood of everything that was going on there. From my experience, and you got outside way more than I did, but in my experience when I was out there, some things that came to mind for me is one, probably minus the people yelling into a megaphone right outside the Good Karma building there, quieter than I expect downtown Milwaukee to be most of the time. Very calm, very happy. Again, outside of the person yelling into a into a megaphone, everybody seemed to be in a fairly good mood.
especially for it being such an uncertain time in our political world. That was something that the Trump staffers even kind of highlighted during the press briefings that we'd have every morning. They did talk about how they wouldn't have J.D. Vance go against Kamala Harris in a debate. And that was because they were talking about the uncertainty of the ticket and what will happen. And since then, actually, Joe Biden announced that he won't be running again.
Mm-hmm.
And so he endorsed Kamala, but not exactly sure how it's going to go, who she's going to pick for VP, or even what'll happen in the convention, which happens in a couple of weeks in Chicago. Mm-hmm. But I think that kind of uncertainty that the staffers presented to the press wasn't exactly what the actual attendees of the fest felt, if that makes sense. So they were talking about it with this uncertainty, and then Trump having survived that assassination attempt the week before. It turned out that everyone that was coming was kind of just like, all right, that we're focused on the future now. We're not focused on what happened beforehand. Trump said he wasn't going to speak on it. He didn't speak on it until after the convention happened. Well, I guess he spoke about it during the actual his speech at the end, but that was like a 2-hour speech. He didn't dwell on that. He ended up talking more about it at a rally like the next day or over the weekend. But I definitely think it was a very positive and calm atmosphere, like you were mentioning. I was talking with some of the people from The Truth, and they were like, "Hey, if this is what living under martial law is like it's not that bad."
Right. Which, I mean, we should say that obviously the media that helped cover it for our team, there are people who are very conservative, people who are incredibly liberal, people who are somewhere more near the middle, and we all came together to cover this as a news item. Our coverage of it, which we tried to cover, again, from a news standpoint, without putting a slant on it, without putting any personal views on it. It was really just about being there, being in the room as it's happening, and reporting back to people who can't be there, because it was kind of a restricted access, obviously. So if you couldn't be there, this gave you at least an understanding of kind of what was going on, which is nice. That's exactly how it should be. I will say there was a lot of talk going into it. Everybody said, okay, the new buzzword is going to be unity. It's going to be all about coming together. And I think we did see that the Republican Party in general at the RNC did come together as a unit. I think we did see on Thursday during that final session that a little bit of that razzle-dazzle we've seen under Trump kind of come back out. I mean, they were trying to find a way to fit Kid Rock in there, which is a weird thing to say. Yeah, Republican National Convention, but we got to get Kid Rock performance in there. To hear, that they're having speakers like Dana White from, the UFC, or Linda McMahon, who, most people probably know from her time with WWE, formerly WWF. Hulk Hogan. I watched back his segment, and we joked about, do you think he's going to rip his shirt?
Yeah,
and he did.
He nailed it. Yeah.
He absolutely did. That kind of theatrics kind of came back, which then did culminate in Trump's speech, which, much to what we were told, he's blocked in for 55 minutes. We both knew. I think everybody there
She knew it. She was smiling when she told us 55, but she had a huge grin on her face. She knew it wasn't going to be.
He can't help but go off the cuff. And, for some people, and you can feel however you want about this, for some people that may have reinforced the message they were expecting from him. It may have reinforced the unity message, or it may have made them think exactly what they already thought, and they may be going another way with it. Regardless of how you felt, it did come together. It was a very successful RNC. There was not any major police incident involving the RNC, which was nice. So I think it all came together very, very smoothly.
Yeah, it was cool. On that Thursday night, I wanted to get a good glimpse of what each news network was talking about before the speech, or before I think it started at 5:45 on Thursday night.
Right.
I wanted to get a glimpse of what everyone's talking about leading up to it, and I flipped over to CNN, and they were talking about how nice it was that Milwaukee was able to hold this convention the way that it went, and how smooth it went with no issues. And when that's kind of the talking point on both sides, I think that's really cool, especially I have bias. That's my hometown city, but yeah, it's great that worked out that way. And you brought up Dana White, and I saw a tweet yesterday about it. So he spoke towards the end, right before Trump. He introduced Trump on Thursday night. So he left on Wednesday or Thursday morning. He left from his vacation on a 377-foot yacht. And that yacht cost $2.8 million per week. So he left Thursday morning, did that speech, and then he flew out the next morning, which actually ended up being the Microsoft computers or whatever happened with that outage. He got out before that happened, I guess, and then now he's back on vacation on the $2.8 million per week yacht.
Must be tough being Dana White. We do want to remind everybody that we appreciate the response we got from the public. Everybody keeping things civil on social media. We know that can be tough. We know this is a very heated exchange when it comes to politics. I think I said this on one of our raps. We had somebody question, well, you're putting a disclaimer on all this stuff. Why are you putting a disclaimer on there? We get it already. You don't do this for local partisan politics, whatever. Currently, local partisan politics doesn't have people camping out on rooftops with, high-powered firearms. Let's hope they never do. We also want to remind people that we are going to attempt to cover the Democratic National Convention as well. It's happening in Chicago. It is not in our backyard. So they are not sending us there. But we will have a team there from 620 WTMJ, and they will be reporting. They'll be bringing news back, and we will do our best to share that information on our platforms to all of our listeners and our viewers, because we do want to present both sides from a media standpoint. This is about the news. It's not, again, about our personal views.
And selfishly, from the pictures I'm seeing, and nothing's finalized on how the security is going to look in August for that convention, but
so glad we're not going.
I'm seeing 4 different security zones. We had 1 that we dealt with. I'm seeing 4 that you'd have to check in through some TSA or some kind of card checkpoint. So selfishly, I'm really glad we don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, very thankful we don't have to go through that as well. And I mean, that, again, is another point for why maybe those tier 2 cities is a better choice, and why we should be thankful that we have a venue such as we have in Milwaukee with the combined use of the Baird Center, Panther Arena, Fiserv Forum, all being in a row, making it for a very simple, calm, safe, manageable Republican National Convention.
Absolutely. And then when I had to leave the security zone to go to a speech or to a different luncheon, it was all still in a close area, even though it was a mile away and I had to deal with the checkpoints. It was still only a mile away, and there's parking available in Milwaukee. So overall, it was a great week and really grateful for all of it. And I'm just still kind of putting it all together that now these characters that I saw in person, they're kind of going back to being the characters I see on TV.
Well, we are currently the characters you're hearing on the radio. We're also sometimes the characters you see on TV, specifically Daily Dodge TV.
Nice.
I'm going to count that as your final thoughts.
Yeah, that works for me.
My final thoughts are that we want to thank everybody at 620 WTMJ and 1017 The Truth out of Milwaukee and our Good Karma Brands home office for being so kind as to host us and give us space and let me drink all the free hot chocolate I wanted while we got stuff done. We want to thank all of our fans, all of our listeners for interacting and engaging and being civil. And, of course, we want to thank the Republican National Convention for choosing Milwaukee as their city. It shows a lot of not only home city pride, but state pride. So we're thankful for that as well.
Absolutely.
So we want to thank you for tuning in. Feel free to stay tuned. We have another community comment with the Waupun Fire Department coming up at 12:35. That's our regularly scheduled community comment. But we want to thank you for tuning in for this special edition where we talk about the RNC in MKE. I'm Justin the Ninja Wylesky.
And I'm Charlie Dern.
Thanks for watching on 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.